You're about to enter into Monika's universe, where her inquiry may align you to new dimensions. You're about to cross a threshold into the unknown. Surrender to the experience. Today, we're going to talk about January initiations, the month that recalibrates. Hello everybody, Happy New Year. Today, when I write this, is the 1st of January. Even though in antiquity, many cultures did not start the year on January 1st. The Western world normalized this date across the globe through the Julian and later the Gregorian calendar, a civic agreement that shaped how time is counted, how administration moves, and how decisions are timed. The Roman decision to begin the civic year on January 1st was tied to the administration and war, so consuls could take office earlier and campaign sooner. Later, Julius Caesar stabilized the calendar through reform. Other calendars remain alive and coherent on their own terms. For example, the Chinese calendar, the Hindu calendars, the Buddhist calendars, the Hebrew calendar, and the Islamic Hijri calendar, and others. Some are lunar, some are lunisolar, some are solar. The rhythm shapes the way a culture experiences time. Having said that, numerology-wise, we just finished 2025, and for me, to be honest, it was the best year of my life. I consider best as in inner maturation, because it was a year I gave myself the opportunity to dive deep into my nervous system and to go into areas I had not wanted to enter because I was not prepared. So I cherish that. And I also know that this new year, 2026, 2 plus 2 plus 6 equals 10. If we reduce the numbers into one digit, it's the number 1. A year 1 is going to propel many different things. My birthday is at the end of April, so this last year, I was on a 4 number, very foundational. It's the year of foundations, plans, systems, discipline, intangible results for me. And in 2026, I move into a 5 number. Changes and adaptations. I'm ready for it. 2026, freedom through movement and learning through experience inside a collective year of initiation, new starts, leadership, fresh timelines, and first moves. One of the things I'm noticing is that until not long ago, when people gave me ideas, I was not very accepting of ideas from others. I'm a manifestor, and the whole you should thing has its texture. Right now, I listen. I do not have to do what anyone tells me, but I can let an idea lead me to a window of opportunity I had not considered. This is the real shift right now. So, on New Year's Eve, my friend Anastasia told me how much she was enjoying my recent articles, adding beautiful compliments that moved me. She said that entering my blog is like stepping into a new realm that is surprisingly different every time, yet exciting. So I listened and decided to try the opening you heard. It was her idea to use the Twilight Zone, which is perhaps my favorite TV show from the end of the 60s. It gave me chills and opened different dimensions to my young self. I'm grateful for her comment. This one is for you, Anna. I'm taking this January as a real threshold. The solstice already turned the light, and now the month turns the psyche. Capricorn holds the backbone of this whole sequence. Capricorn, as you know, it's time, it's maturation, and Capricorn is that part of you that acts with consequence, that chooses what can endure, that builds with devotion instead of mood. So I'm going to walk you through this like a journey. I would like you to feel these archetypes and embody them because they are new cycles. And each initiation expands the exact area of your life where Capricorn sits right now, where strategy can be crafted wisely, where your individual journey can define and orient the soul for a long stretch of what is being shaped. Spend time within, giving yourself the opportunity to plan for a thriving future free of shackles. You already know that I equate freedom with financial freedom, as freedom means having more than one option. And that additional option takes you away from the possibility of complying to authority against your will for lack of leverage. Venus archetype. So here we go. Below is a table with the dates, the time, the transit, and the degrees. I'm not going to speak them. You will have the table for yourself. So let's talk about the journey. We begin with Chiron stationary direct, and then the full moon on January the 3rd, which started with a bang. Unless you're under a rock, the United States snatched Maduro from Venezuela in a major military op. Quick fact, Venezuela's chart has the sun at 13 degrees of Cancer and the USA at 12 degrees of Cancer. This is where the full moon was at the exact time of the operation. This is a gate where we're now. The psyche gets lit up through the emotional body. Cancer and Capricorn hold the axis of inner and outer authority and emotional needs and outer support. And Jupiter in Cancer stands across from the Capricorn cluster like an amplifier of feeling, meaning, belonging, and protection. Making a T-square is Chiron in Aries as the courage requirement. This is where you feel what matters, and you also feel what must mature. This is where the nervous system becomes part of your intelligence. Then the initiations begin in Capricorn, one by one. The Sun conjunct Venus in Capricorn sets a new phase relationship between my will and my needs. And it makes the question practical. What do I require in order to stand in my own authority so I can engage with others from choice and leverage, not from depletion? In Capricorn, this becomes about standards, about right timing and consequence, because the need is not sentimental, it is structural. It is the baseline that lets me build, decide, and relate without bargaining away what I know that I need. Venus conjuncts Mars in Capricorn, bringing my essential needs into contact with desire and initiation. And I feel the pressure of a clean decision that wants embodiment. Venus clarifies what I require to be resourced and steady. Mars brings the courage to act on it. And Capricorn turns that meeting into a plan that can be repeated, measured, and sustained. So my desire stops floating and becomes directed effort. And my needs stop being negotiable and become the ground from which I move. Just remember what started for you February 24, 2024, when the last conjunction happened at 6 degrees of Aquarius. Sun conjunct Mars is the ignition point of the whole Capricorn sequence. The Sun brings light to identity, vitality, and the will to choose. Mars brings initiation, courage, heat, and the capacity to act. In Capricorn, this conjunction wants disciplined action, strategic motion, and a decision that can hold its shape through time. The ruler is Saturn, so the question becomes, what is the mature use of force? What is the right timing? And what is the plan that earns its future through consistency? This is where the will stops being internal dialogue and becomes a concrete direction, carried by effort, standards, and the willingness to do the next correct step again and again. In the body, it reads as focus, drive, and a clean search of forward motion, and it asks for a channel that is worthy of it. Capricorn asks you to choose the task that builds leverage, the practice that strengthens your spine, the commitment that creates consequence. Sun, Mars in Capricorn also clarifies leadership, and leadership as self-command, leadership as responsibility, leadership as doing what you said you would do. This is where courage becomes practical and where the plan gains propulsion because it is rooted in structure, timing, and devotion. Then the oppositions to Jupiter arrive. Venus opposite Jupiter, Sun opposite Jupiter, Mars opposite Jupiter. Jupiter expands the emotional field and the oppositions ask for consequence. Capricorn holds the promise and Capricorn holds the time. The feeling carries the truth and the structure carries the future. Then the squares to Chiron arrive at the same time. Venus square Chiron, Sun square Chiron, Mars square Chiron, Mercury square Chiron. And this is where the month becomes intimate. Chiron is the vulnerability point, the place where pain taught you a language, the place where you learn to adapt, the place where you carry a sensitivity that can either be protected through avoidance or matured through conscious action. The squares make pressure, they make friction, They make the question unavoidable. Venus square Chiron brings the issue of needs and value into direct contact with the wound. And the question becomes what you require in order to stop negotiating what harms you, what you require to be resourced enough to stay coherent, and what you require to keep your value intact. The Sun square Chiron brings will and identity into that contact, and it asks you to stop splitting yourself into the part that knows and the part that still freezes, because the square demands integration. Mars square Chiron brings initiation directly into the vulnerability, and it asks for courage that is not impulsive, courage that is precise, courage that knows the wound and still moves forward. Mercury square Chiron brings the mind and the voice into the tension, and it asks for a clean language, honest naming, and the strategy does not bypass what is tender. Chiron is the anchor of this tension, and this tension becomes an engine when you allow it to drive maturation instead of reactivity, because it insists on a plan that you can endure. Mercury opposite Jupiter arrives as the mind meets the emotional field in full volume. Jupiter in Cancer expands meaning through feeling, and Mercury in Capricorn wants to think through consequence. And the opposition makes a bridge that can either exaggerate a story or clarify one. This is where you can feel how your mind has been captive to a narrative that no longer serves your life, because Jupiter amplifies it. And you can also feel the alternative as a living option, because Capricorn can choose what is real and build from there on. Venus enters Aquarius and values begin moving into a wider field. The Capricorn work stays as the backbone, and the social dimension comes online, because Aquarius brings perspective, community, and the future, and Venus brings desire, attraction, and the value into the collective space. So the question becomes how your values want to live in the world you're building. Mercury conjunct Mars in Capricorn sharpens the mind into action. Thought becomes decisive. Words become initiation. This is not about talking for its own sake. This is about language that moves life forward, because Mars brings the initiating force and Mercury brings the articulation, and Capricorn demands that that decision has consequence. Then the moon joins, and the new moon in late Capricorn seals the Capricorn chapter with a reset, a private recommitment, and a clean beginning in the very place that asks for maturity. Then the Aquarius initiations arrive. Venus will conjunct Pluto, Mercury conjunct Pluto, Sun conjunct Pluto, Mars conjunct Pluto. Do you see what's happening? The personal becomes collective. Pluto in Aquarius brings long evolutionary pressure, and it is ruthless about motive. It concentrates what matters. It intensifies truth, and it asks for honesty in the strategy itself, because Pluto strips what is false and exposes what is essential. These conjunctions do not feel like surface change. They feel like a shift in orientation, a deeper alignment with what you are actually here to build. Neptune enters Aries at 0 degrees, and the signal is era level. Aries brings ignition, initiative, and the beginning point, and Neptune brings dissolution, imagination, longing, and spiritualization. So the collective atmosphere changes, and the question becomes what kind of courage humanity would embody when the dream and the impulse meet at the threshold. The next time Neptune will enter Aries will be in 165 years from now. A little bit of myth and a companion. This month in this year begins as one. January is a 1 month. 2026 adds to 1. The Gregorian calendar marks it. Numerology mirrors it. The sky echoes it through conjunctions, new phase relationships, initiations. A strategy can be placed now that wants to be fulfilled long term, as individuals can and will have the courage to liberate themselves from the shackles of their mind that still make them feel that they're prisoners of circumstances, because it is through the generosity of Jupiter, by getting in touch with the emotional body, and the courage of Chiron as the warrior along with Mars, that this long-term plan becomes a real potential for years to come. Take time to contemplate not only what I'm writing, but this symbology. Dive into this arc because it is a promissory outcome if you take time for yourself to weave your own destiny within the destiny of the collective. Be brave. Now let's talk about Chiron symbology. Chiron is a son of Kronos, Saturn, and he carries a wound that does not resolve through knowledge alone. In the myth, Chiron is wounded by an arrow poisoned with Hydra blood, and the wound stays incurable even for the healer. He then offers his immortality in an exchange that allows Prometheus to be freed, as Zeus, or Jupiter, accepts the exchange. You see what is genius about this configuration? Chiron in Aries is learning to embody his wound as courage, and squaring Jupiter in Cancer, the tension becomes a way of liberation. Jupiter accepts Chiron's offering of immortality that will help Prometheus, who had been bound by Jupiter himself for giving fire to humanity. Thus, the light within each one of us can serve as a source of valor, illumination, and evolution. In this mythic arc, Saturn sets the condition, Jupiter grants the passage, and Chiron becomes the bridge. The wound remains and is metabolized into agency and human action. What liberates is a conscious offering. Chiron cannot heal himself as he is an immortal. The healing arrives through meaning, through exchange, through the decision to transform pain into a vehicle for collective illumination. Chiron transiting will soon conjunct its own planetary node at the end of Aries, a collective orb that will propel humans to face and reassess a different direction in relationship to their own individual pain. The south planetary node of Chiron describes the inherited wound pattern carried forward as a lived memory. It holds ancestral, collective, and archetypal memory, revealing how sensitivity became armor and how endurance becomes second nature. When this node is activated by transit, the past rises into awareness as completed training, asking for recognition rather than repetition. Thus, the invitation is to carry the intelligence of the wound forward, allowing vulnerability to become agency and lived experience to become medicine that serves a new direction of consciousness and purpose. So when I look at January, the symbolic spine is Saturn, Jupiter, and Chiron, with the personal planets initiating inside of Capricorn. Capricorn, as is ruled by Saturn, it is time, maturation, consequence, while the personal planets one by one ignite. They ask for values that can be kept. They ask for courage that can be repeated. They ask for a mind that can focus and follow through, while Jupiter protects what is worth protecting, making the inner truth louder and supporting the capacity to nourish the future from the inside out. Chiron in Aries, stationed in direct, makes the courage actionable. This is where the warrior becomes an embodied choice, where the plan stops being aspirational and becomes a long-term strategy. Prometheus belongs here by the fire, with the light which in turn brings awareness, the inner spark that refuses to comply, the clarity that makes you stop negotiating with fear, and the liberation that comes through the willingness to hold your own life in your own hands, with valor. This month's tension is necessary to jumpstart your next life, the one initiating now. January is asking us to find our own Apollo that enlightens our own Chiron, our most vulnerable point, and it asks us for the courage to liberate ourselves from pain by turning instinct into skill and knowledge into medicine. In order to be free, one must embody one's own light with courage. One more marker. 6 years have passed since January 12, 2020, when Saturn and Pluto conjoined in Capricorn. Half a Jupiter cycle has passed. This is a meaningful midpoint. The question that belongs here, the one that carries so much weight, is simple. How much have you evolved in consciousness and awareness since January 2020? And how grateful are you that you have been unwinding the knots that had you bound to a belief system that no longer works? You have until the summer when Jupiter in Leo will oppose Pluto, calling for the midpoint of the cycle that began in the summer of 2020, when we were all forced to be locked in our homes because authorities were exceeding their power. Some of us did not comply and are now living fully with the consequences of following our own truth. Jupiter is truth when it has agency, Without agency, it becomes dogma. Take this month seriously. Print the table, mark the days that matter, locate Capricorn in your chart, and treat that house as the arena of maturation. Choose one strategy that you can hold for the long stretch, one value you refuse to betray, one action that proves courage. Let Jupiter in Cancer restore the emotional body and the nervous system. Let Mars move you. Let Saturn give you time and structure. Let Chiron station in direct become the moment you stop circling the wound and start using it as a threshold. This is how the knots unwind. Through consequence, through devotion, through a plan that keeps choosing you back, and through a fire that remains yours. One of my biggest prayers these days is that everybody closes their eyes at the same time, and everybody in this world, 8 billion people, closing their eyes and for 1 minute looking inside of themselves to see the truth, and then awakening to consciousness. Well, that is wishful thinking. Have a great week.